Holy crud, wasn't the 11th hour amazing. But this isn't going to be my review of the 11th hour. That is not what you'll be getting in this podcast. If you're interested in my review, then I invite you to read it. It's on Behind the Sofa. It's a text review, reading. But anyhow, there's a link to it in the show notes. So here is what will be in this episode. There will be spoilers for Doctor Who, the 11th hour, as I share some non-review considerations about the episode, and also a bit about Lost, Happily Ever After, and that will be a little bit more spoilerish. So this is going to be a fairly short episode this week with just a few brief considerations on each topic. But hey, it is a new episode a week after the previous one, so do not complain. Anyhow, let's go. The Cloister Room with Tom Dickinson. Episode 010, The Fish Custard Dating Controversy. That's right, it's the Cloister Room, and welcome to it. I'm your host, Tom Dickinson, 2 Eyes, No E's. In Act 1, I'm going to talk about why I think it's cool that the Doctor and his new companion are keeping secrets from one another. In Act 2, I will talk about the Fish Custard Dating Controversy, and in Act 3, I will talk a little bit about why, if anything happens, Desmond Hume will be my constant. So Act 1, The Secret. There's something interesting about the idea of a companion keeping secrets from the Doctor. In a recent storyline that was done in the Big Finish audio plays, there's a character named Charlie Pollard who was keeping a secret from the Doctor. Now, Charlie, as you may know, was a companion of the Eighth Doctor, but at a certain point in that storyline, Charlie was left by the Eighth Doctor and ended up getting picked up by the Sixth Doctor, which is a little bit confusing, but trust me, it ends up working out in the storyline. Anyhow, while Charlie was traveling with the Sixth Doctor, a major component of this storyline was the fact that she was keeping a secret from the Doctor, the secret that she had already traveled with a future incarnation of him, a secret that she knew would make him kind of angry if he were to find out about it. And eventually he does sort of find out about it, and there's all sorts of things that go down. I recommend those stories, but that's not what I'm talking about. I just wanted to bring up the point that since the Doctor is usually the one in possession of the secrets of the universe that he can reveal to the companion, it's a nice change of pace if the companion knows something the Doctor doesn't know. So, what about Amy's secret from the Doctor? The secret that it is the night before her wedding when the Doctor picks her up. Well, it's not exactly as huge a secret as the one Charlie was keeping from the Sixth Doctor, but it does give her the opportunity to surprise him. She has the upper hand on him about something, and I kind of expect that, based on what we know about Amy, she's really only interested in a couple of brief journeys with the Doctor before returning home to her life and her fiancé, whoever that fiancé might be. I think it's probably Rory, but, who knows? They might surprise us. It might be Jeff, or it might be someone we haven't met. Anyhow, so when the Doctor finds out that she's not committing to life in the TARDIS in the way that Rose, Martha, and Donna did, he's probably going to be quite destabilized about how he views his relationship to Amy, which is a bit of a reversal from the Doctor's relationship to Martha, which ended when Martha got a bit destabilized about what her expectations were from the Doctor, because it's clear that from the beginning Martha was expecting a romantic relationship with the Doctor, and the Doctor was not expecting that. So yeah, like I said, not as earth-shattering as Charlie's secret, but it makes for some interesting dynamics between the characters, especially because the Doctor also seems to be keeping a secret from Amy. While the two of them are in the TARDIS, we see that there's a peculiar image on the TARDIS scanner, and that image is the pattern of the crack in the universe, the crack from Amy's bedroom wall as a girl. Now, when we see this, the Doctor rather awkwardly answers Amy's question about why he's bringing her along by saying, "Oh, it's because I'm lonely and for no other reason. Yeah, there's no possible ulterior motive." But I'm starting to wonder whether the 11th Doctor might have a bit of a manipulative streak, one that he could have inherited from himself as the Seventh Doctor, who was a sort of manipulator and almost a user. He was, well, I wouldn't go so far as to call him a user, because that's bad, but he was a bit manipulative, and he would keep things from people, and he would sort of lead them in directions without telling them, and I feel like that's what the 11th Doctor might possibly be doing to Amy right now. Now, Seven was not my favorite Doctor. In fact, he's probably my least favorite Doctor, which is not to say he's a bad Doctor, just that all of the other Doctors are really, really very good. In any case, it is an interesting take on the character, and if that's where Matt Smith is going, then I can't wait to see. Or maybe not. Maybe that's not where it's going, and maybe things are going to be kept a little bit more light and fun. I think Stephen Moffat kind of wants to gear this series towards children, so it could be that nothing so complicated is going to be happening between the Doctor and Amy. But even so, I'm really interested to see how the partnership with them progresses, particularly in light of the secrets these are keeping. I'll return with Act 2 right after this. And now for a brief but terribly urgent interruption.
Look, whenever you see me in this part of the town, pacing up and down like this, be a good chap and don't interrupt me, will you? Unless it's terribly urgent. It's not terribly urgent, is it?
There are podcasts, and there are podcasts, and Staggering Stories is one of those podcasts. Listen to our in-depth and comprehensive reviews.
I really liked it.
Be in awe of our witty repartee.
You're idiots.
Cower before the might of El Presidente.
I shall have them all executed, but I'm drifting.
Marvel at the thoughts of the head of Pertwee. Staggering Stories. I like it, but I don't know why.
Can I have a glass of water, please? This voiceover's killing my throat.
Okay, we are back with Act 2, in which I will talk about the Fish Custard Dating Controversy. This is just a consideration on the chronological placement of the show. As you've probably already heard, fans and journalists have picked up on a few date discrepancies. There aren't very many specific references to when any of the various parts of the 11th hour take place. I won't go too deep into the controversies about London landmarks or whether the TARDIS ought to have crashed on New Year's Day 2005, because that's what... Okay, never mind. I will not mention that, but I will mention two contradictory pieces of evidence about the placement of the main part of the episode. You know, the part where the Doctor takes on the bad guys. One is the presence of camera phones, video phones, and contemporary-looking laptops, which conclusively dates this show in the early 21st century. And the other is Rory Williams' hospital ID badge, of which we get a close-up, and on the badge, it says that it was issued on 30 November 1990, which conclusively proves that the episode takes place within just a couple years after 1990. Now, as you may have noticed, these two conclusive references simply do not match up. And there are two possible ways to interpret this. One, Rory's badge was a production error. Or two, it's a deliberate hint that something mysterious is going on. Now, the first one, if it's an error, well, that's possible, but it doesn't seem likely. The production crew isn't as sloppy about that, and especially not about a prop that is seen so clearly and we get a close-up of. And the second option, well, that one's also possible, but it's kind of also unlikely. Because if they wanted to hint at something mysterious, don't you think they might maybe have come on with those hints a little bit stronger? So, I lied. There weren't only those two options. I'm invoking a third option, and that option is that Stephen Moffat is screwing with us. He is deliberately frustrating our attempts to place a story in time. So yes, it's a discrepancy, but it's not a mistake. I think he's drawing deliberate inspiration from the vague placement of the unit stories of the 1970s, which inspired the unit dating controversy, a silly little squabble so fierce it has its own Wikipedia page. If you're not familiar with that controversy, basically it's that there are stories set in the, well, they were broadcast in the 1970s, and there's some controversy over whether they were supposed to be set contemporaneously with the broadcast date or in the not-too-distant future, maybe 10 years down the line, and that's why in the Centauran stratagem, the 10th Doctor says, I used to work with UNIT back in the 70s, or was it the 80s? And we all laugh, except for those of us who cry. But anyhow, I don't know if they were being deliberately ambiguous back then. Probably not, but I bet that's what Moffat's doing now. There are two reasons to do that. 1, to stir up debate and excitement among the fans, and 2, to add to the whole timeless fairy tale feeling of the episode, avoiding the specific timeline that had developed in the Russell T Davies era. So I guess we'll just have to keep measuring dates the way the Doctor does in the episode. 12 years since Fish Custard, 14 years since Fish Custard, and that's good enough for me. Specific date references for present-day stories are overrated, so we will just have to live with the Fish Custard Dating Controversy as a part of the fabric of the show. And that's Act 2. I'll be back with Act 3 right after the Dune Quote of the week. Think you of the fact that a deaf person cannot hear. Then what deafness may we not all possess? What senses do we lack that we cannot see and hear another world all around us? From the Orange Catholic Bible. And so now it's time for Act 3. Tom says some stuff about Lost. If anything happens, Desmond Hume will be my constant. And in case you're wondering why that is, it's because episodes about Desmond tend to be some of the better episodes of Lost. Now, this wasn't as good as Season 4's The Constant, and it probably wasn't even as good as Ab Aeterno, the Richard Alpert episode from 2 weeks ago, but it was a great episode. And that is true for reasons beyond the fact that it brings back Desmond, it brings back Charlie, it brings back Faraday, it brings back Penny, it brings back Charles Widmore. Well, not that Charles Widmore was missing, but, it's always good to see more Charles Widmore. But no, it's good for reasons beyond those reasons. It's good because we're finally starting to get some idea of what the point is of the Flash Sideways. Not that we really know what the exact nature is of the Flash Sideways universe. I mean, all those theories I've been discussing so far on this podcast, that is not at all a settled question. But we're starting to get an idea of what narrative purpose it serves in the structure of the show and how it's going to relate to the main timeline going forward. So far the show has mostly been moving things around in both universes, but now there's a sense that they're moving things forward, and it's Desmond who sets that off by forming this connection between his original self and his Flash Sideways self. Now, this show sort of made a promise to us that Desmond was going to be important. That promise was implied in Flashes Before Your Eyes, and then again in The Constant, and it was pretty much sealed when Faraday told Desmond that he was special and that the rules didn't apply to him back at the very beginning of Season 5. But since then, the show has sort of seemed like it was going to fail to make good on that promise. In fact, it's pretty much pushed the whole character of Desmond to the margins of the show. So I'm glad that Lost is finally making good on that promise and bringing Desmond back into the fold in such a large way. And you know what? If they do well with him, then I guess I'm kind of glad they waited to bring him back so that it would have more impact. And I can't wait to see what he does next now that he has a renewed sense of both purpose and clarity. Sorry, I meant to say clarity, and usually I would edit out my mispronunciations, but that one was kind of funny because it rhymes with Faraday. Anyhow, he has renewed purpose and clarity in both universes, and I can't wait to see where that's going. So that, my friends, draws this episode of The Cloister Room to the close. You can visit me at thecloisterroom.com, follow me at twitter.com/thecloisterroom, all one word, of course, why wouldn't it be? You can read my review of the most recent and upcoming episodes of Doctor Who at behindthesofa.org.uk, and you can send feedback, feed me back, you can feed me back at feedback@thecloisterroom.com. So, until next week, when I will be discussing The Beast Below, the next Lost episode, which is called Everybody Loves Hugo, and whatever else should happen to strike my fancy, this is Tom Dickinson, Two Eyes No E's, signing off. You have been listening to The Cloister Room, which is a fan-produced podcast and is not at all affiliated with anyone who is involved in making Doctor Who or Lost or anything else. Actually, in every single disclaimer, I usually say something like, I'm not affiliated with anyone but myself. But that's not really true. I'm actually affiliated with the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance, which you can find at drwhopodcastalliance.org, and it's pretty sweet. I like the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance, and they have links to all sorts of Doctor Who podcasts other than this one, so go check it out. And I guess that's my disclaimer, although it's not much of one.